Was this really just a simple mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment? Or is there something much deeper and darker lurking beneath the surface of Weatherfield's most famous golden girl? Can a survivor ever truly escape the cycle of violence? Or are they destined to become the very thing they fear most? We finally have the answer to the mystery that has been eating away at Coronation Street fans for months. Sarah Platt killed Theo Silverton. The reveal didn't come through a standard police interrogation or a tearful confession in the Rovers. Instead, it was delivered through a masterfully tense dinner party hosted by none other than the lead detective on the case, Kit Green. This wasn't just about catching a killer. It was a psychological game of cat and mouse, where the hunter was unknowingly sharing a bed with the prey. The irony here is thick enough to choke on. Sarah spent weeks watching Summer Spellman and others take the fall, or at least the suspicion, while she played the role of the supportive partner to the man trying to put her behind bars. But why Sarah? On the surface, she's the last person you'd expect to be wielding a scaffolding pole as a murder weapon. However, when you look at the analysis of her character arc, this feels less like a shocking twist and more like a tragic inevitability. Sarah didn't go up onto that scaffolding on April 23rd with the intent to kill. She went there looking for Todd. She found Theo instead, a man who represented the absolute worst of human nature, a controlling, abusive narcissist who had already left a vicar to die and was now threatening her. In my opinion, the writers chose Sarah because she carries the heaviest baggage of anyone on the street. She isn't just reacting to Theo. She's reacting to every ghost in her past, specifically Callum Logan. When we look at the emotional inside of that moment on the scaffolding, we have to recognize that Sarah was essentially in a state of hyperarousal. Theo didn't just insult her. He weaponized the memory of her and Todd's dead son, Billy, and threatened her life. Internally, Sarah wasn't a 40-year-old businesswoman in that moment. She was a terrified survivor back in the Platt's annex, feeling the shadow of Callum Logan over her. Emotionally, she had reached a breaking point where the line between self-defense and preemptive strike became totally blurred. She felt that if she didn't strike first, she wouldn't leave that scaffolding alive. It was a raw, primal scream of never again, translated into a physical blow. The psychological layer here is fascinating because it touches on the concept of re-traumatization. Sarah has a documented history of postpartum psychosis and extreme trauma-induced anxiety. When Theo moved toward her, his behavior triggered a fight-or-flight response that her brain, already scarred by past attacks, interpreted as a lethal threat. Psychologically, Sarah didn't kill Theo because she hated him. She killed him because her psyche could not handle one more person trying to control or hurt her. She was acting out of an ego-preservation instinct that has been honed by years of surviving the Platt family curse. My interpretation of this event is that it reframes Sarah as a legacy killer. She isn't a villain in the traditional sense, but she is someone who has learned that the only way to deal with monsters is to bury them. The problem, and this is where my opinion comes in, is the cover-up. I disagree with the idea that she had no choice but to hide it. Had she called the police immediately, she could have made a very strong case for self-defense given Theo's history of domestic violence. By choosing to hide the body and send fake texts, she transitioned from a victim of circumstance to a criminal actor. She traded her moral high ground for a lifetime of looking over her shoulder. The role of Gary Windass in all of this adds another layer of complexity that is honestly quite chilling. Why did she call him? Because Gary is the unofficial cleaner of Weatherfield. He has his own body count, and Sarah knew that he, above anyone else, would understand the necessity of a permanent solution. Their shared history isn't just romantic, it's a shared addiction to secrets and the darker side of survival. Gary didn't just help her out of the goodness of his heart. He helped her because it reinforces his own role as the protector of the women in his life, even if that protection leads them further into the darkness. Psychologically, Gary's involvement is about control and shared trauma. By helping Sarah cover up a murder, he has ensured that they are forever bonded by blood. It's a toxic, codependent dynamic that suggests Gary can only feel truly connected to someone if they are as broken or as compromised as he is. He wiped the blood from that pole not just to save Sarah, but to maintain the status quo, where he is the man with all the answers and all the secrets. It's a power move disguised as an act of love. The conflict escalates significantly when we look at the fallout in the present day. Sarah is now walking around with a secret that is literally making her physically sick. The irony of her dating Kit Green, the very man hunting the killer, is almost Shakespearean. Every time Kit talks about the case, he's unknowingly tightening the noose around the woman he loves. This creates a psychological tension for Sarah that is unsustainable. She is living a double life where every romantic moment is tainted by the knowledge that if he knew the truth, he would be legally obligated to handcuff her. Can you imagine the mental toll of waking up next to the person who represents your own destruction? The escalation reaches a boiling point during that dinner party. Maria's public accusation that Sarah and Gary are having an affair is the ultimate red herring, but it's one that almost forced the truth out. Sarah's reaction, cutting her hand on glass, was a physical manifestation of her internal cracking. The blood on the glass was a callback to the blood on the scaffolding. It was a blink and you'll miss it moment of distress that revealed everything to those paying close attention. The tension here is that the secret is no longer just between Sarah and Gary. The vibe of their guilt is starting to infect everyone around them. Todd Grimshaw's role in the aftermath is equally tragic. Sarah arguably killed Theo to protect Todd, believing Theo had already harmed him. But the psychological cost to Todd has been immense. He was in an abusive, coercive relationship, and now the man who tortured him is dead, but the hero who saved him is keeping him in the dark. My opinion is that the betrayal of the silence is almost as bad as the murder itself. Sarah watched Summer Spellman go to prison for a crime she knew she committed. That's not just survival. That's cold-blooded self-preservation at the expense of an innocent young girl's life. Interpretation-wise, this moves Sarah into the anti-hero territory. We want to root for her because Theo was a monster, but we can't ignore the collateral damage. She is sacrificing the people around her to keep her own life intact. Psychologically, she is using her children, Harry and Bethany, as a justification for her silence. She tells herself she's doing it for them, but is she really? Or is she just terrified of the tough women she'd encounter in prison? It's a classic case of cognitive dissonance, convincing herself she's a good person while doing objectively terrible things, predicting the future of the storyline. The escalation isn't going to stop at a dinner party. The tension will continue to build until the house of cards inevitably falls. I predict that Gary will be the one to crack first. He's already on the verge of telling Maria the truth, and Gary's guilt usually manifests in impulsive, destructive ways. If Gary talks, Sarah's world ends. But the real final boss here is DS Lisa Swain. She is a formidable detective who doesn't miss a beat, and she's already looking at Sarah with that detective's intuition. It's only a matter of time before the physical evidence, perhaps a misplaced scaffolding pole or a digital footprint from Theo's phone, points back to the Platts. The consequences for Sarah will be life-altering. If she is found out, she won't just lose her freedom. She'll lose the trust of the Platt Mafia. While Tina O'Brien believes the family would rally around her, I think the strain would be too much. David Platt, specifically, would never let her live down the stupidity of not calling the police. Their relationship has always been a mix of fierce loyalty and brutal honesty, and this would be the ultimate test of that bond. Can Sarah survive a prison sentence? Psychologically, I think it would destroy her. She's already fragile, and the harsh reality of Inside would be a far cry from the fashion world of Underworld. So, where do we go from here? The escalation of this plot has turned Coronation Street into a high-stakes psychological thriller. We are no longer just watching a soap. We are watching a character study in trauma, guilt, and the lengths a person will go to stay safe. Sarah Platt has officially crossed the line, and as much as we might understand why she did it, the law and Kit Green might not be so forgiving. The irony of the heroine becoming the villain is the heart of the story, and it's a journey that is far from over. What do you think was the exact moment Sarah lost control? Was it when Theo mentioned Billy, or was she gone the moment she stepped onto that scaffolding? And here's the big one for the comments. If you were Kit Green and you found out the woman you loved was a killer, would you turn her in, or would you become an accomplice to protect her? The The psychological complexity of this reveal is what makes it so higher attention. We aren't just here for the whodunit. We're here for the what happens next. Sarah Platt has transformed before our eyes, and the street will never be the same. The ripple effect of Theo's death is just beginning, and it's going to touch every single person in Weatherfield. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the fallout of this reveal. We'll be tracking every development, every look from DS Swain, and every suspicious conversation between Sarah and Gary. Drop a comment below with your wildest predictions for Sarah's future. Is she headed for a prison cell, or will she somehow get away with it like Gary Windass has for years? Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed this analysis. We'll see you in the next one for more Coronation Street commentary and original insights. The transition of Sarah Louise Platt from the teenage mom we all rooted for to a woman with Theo's blood on her hands is one of the most significant shifts in soap history. It challenges our perception of her and forces us to ask, how much trauma can one person take before they finally break? Sarah hasn't just broken, she's rebuilt herself into something far more dangerous, a woman who knows how to hide a body. And in the world of Coronation Street, that's a skill that usually comes with a very high price tag. Psychologically, the shorthand between the Platts, Sarah, David, and Gail, means that even without a confession, the air in that house is about to get very thick. They sense when one of their own is in trouble. Gail, who has seen it all from Richard Hillman to Callum Logan, will likely be the most interesting to watch. Will she see the reflection of her past mistakes in her daughter's eyes? Or will she simply go into protection mode again, further enabling the cycle of violence and secrecy that has defined the Platt family for decades? Opinion-wise, I think the show is at its best when it explores these dark, messy corners of human psychology. Sarah isn't a bad person, but she's made a series of bad choices driven by fear. My interpretation is that the writers are using her to show that good people are capable of evil acts under the right or wrong circumstances. This isn't just about Theo. It's about the fragility of the human spirit. The escalation will likely involve a third party, perhaps someone who saw more than they let on. Was there a witness on that building site? In Soapland, no one is ever truly alone, especially not on a scaffolding in the middle of a busy area. If a witness emerges, the psychological pressure on Sarah will become a physical threat. She will have to decide how far she is willing to go to silence them. Would she kill again to protect the life she's built with Kit? It's a terrifying question, but one that this storyline has made us have to ask. The conflict with Gary is also far from over. Gary is currently Sarah's only lifeline, but he's also her biggest liability. If Kit starts looking into Gary, which he already is, Sarah will have to watch the man who saved her life go down for a crime he didn't commit. This creates an impossible moral dilemma. Does she save herself and let Gary rot? Or does she sacrifice her own future to save his? Given Sarah's history of choosing her kids first, my prediction is that she'll let Gary take the fall if it comes to it. It sounds cold, but Sarah is in survival mode, and in that state, loyalty is often the first thing to go. Emotional insight into Gary shows he's also struggling. He's not a sociopath. He's a man who has done terrible things for what he believed were the right reasons. Helping Sarah was an instinctive move, but now he has to live with the reality of being an accessory to murder. This will undoubtedly strain his marriage to Maria, who already suspects something is off. Maria's intuition is one of her strongest traits, and she won't stop digging until she finds the truth. The conflict between Sarah and Maria is about to become the central axis of the show. Psychologically, Maria represents the moral compass that Sarah has lost. By confronting Sarah, Maria is forcing her to look into a mirror she doesn't want to see. It's an escalation that will lead to a total breakdown of the friendship groups on the street. You can't have a murder secret between friends and expect the corned beef ash evenings to continue as normal. The social fabric of Weatherfield is being ripped apart, one secret at a time. My interpretation of the Cluedo atmosphere Tina O'Brien described in the green room is that it translated perfectly to the screen. The uncertainty among the cast fueled the performance of uncertainty among the characters. It created a genuine sense of paranoia that bleeds through every scene. This is high-retention storytelling at its finest because the audience feels that paranoia right along with Sarah. We are all in that green room now, waiting to see whose number is up next. Final prediction: Kit Green will find the evidence himself. It will be a small, domestic detail, something Sarah says or does in their flat, that triggers his detective brain. He will have to make a choice that will define his character forever. Will he be the cop who follows the law, or the man who protects the woman he loves? It's a classic noir setup in a modern soap setting, and I am here for every second of it. So, what's your take on the Gary and Sarah endgame theory? Do you think they are truly meant to be, or are they just two people who are too damaged for anyone else? And do you believe Sarah's self-defense plea would actually hold up in court after the cover-up? Opinion-wise, I think the show is at its best when it explores these dark, messy corners of human psychology. Sarah isn't a bad person, but she's made a series of bad choices driven by fear. My interpretation is that the writers are using her to show that good people are capable of evil acts under the right or wrong circumstances. This isn't just about Theo. It's about the fragility of the human spirit. The escalation will likely involve a third party, perhaps someone who saw more than they let on. Was there a witness on that building site? In Soapland, no one is ever truly alone, especially not on a scaffolding in the middle of a busy area. If a witness emerges, the psychological pressure on Sarah will become a physical threat. She will have to decide how far she is willing to go to silence them. Would she kill again to protect the life she's built with Kit? It's a terrifying question, but one that this storyline has made us have to ask. The conflict with Gary is also far from over. Gary is currently Sarah's only lifeline, but he's also her biggest liability. If Kit starts looking into Gary, which he already is, Sarah will have to watch the man who saved her life go down for a crime he didn't commit. This creates an impossible moral dilemma. Does she save herself and let Gary rot? Or does she sacrifice her own future to save his? Given Sarah's history of choosing her kids first, my prediction is that she'll let Gary take the fall if it comes to it. It sounds cold, but Sarah is in survival mode, and in that state, loyalty is often the first thing to go. Emotional insight into Gary shows he's also struggling. He's not a sociopath. He's a man who has done terrible things for what he believed were the right reasons. Helping Sarah was an instinctive move, but now he has to live with the reality of being an accessory to murder. This will undoubtedly strain his marriage to Maria, who already suspects something is off. Maria's intuition is one of her strongest traits, and she won't stop digging until she finds the truth. The conflict between Sarah and Maria is about to become the central axis of the show. Psychologically, Maria represents the moral compass that Sarah has lost. By confronting Sarah, Maria is forcing her to look into a mirror she doesn't want to see. It's an